minutes to me, several days to you. Welcome to Existing on Different Timelines with Pat at Ground Zero Salem. We're listening to absolutely nothing because I didn't bother to throw anything on before starting to shoot this. The Front 242 record is over. So I'm just going to talk about the second pile of stuff that I've purchased over the past couple of months. This is all older stuff. Some must-haves. A lot of Finnish stuff. Not gonna lie, I was partially inspired by that excellent Adramalech video. If you haven't seen his stuff, do yourself a favor. It's both informative and fucking hilarious. Bunch of Finnish stuff and a bunch of random stuff. Stuff that I wanted, some stuff I was familiar with, some stuff I knew I needed or would be nice to have at any rate in my collection. Starting with the Finnish stuff. Let's go. Set it off. Adramalech, Psychostasia. I'd heard of this band for ages. I don't think it connected with me at first that they were a Finnish band. The Finn scene is weird. I think there's probably it's a quarter of the number of the bands from the Swedish scene, but who knows? All with kind of their own sound, but all kind of influencing each other. I've been aware of death metal from there since I was an Amorphous super fan when those first couple of records came out, and I became aware of the existence of a lot of the other ones like Convulse and Adramalech and those heavy hitters, starting probably maybe 12 years ago or something like that. But I'm always discovering something new, it feels like. Been turned on to Lubricant and what a funny thing to say. Excuse me, the Lubricant discography and Necrobiosis and all these bands. It's the same thing with the Swedish bands. I keep thinking I've heard every Swedish death metal demo by now, but things just keep popping out of the rotted soil, so to speak. Anyway, that tangent aside, didn't know these guys were Finnish. Used to see the CD just sitting, gathering dust on the shelves at my Newberry Comics that I used to work at. Wish I would have grabbed it back then. I'm sure it would have been cheaper. This wasn't too bad. I found it for a decent price, but this is Psychostasia. Came out on Extreme Music as a re-release. Originally came out in 96, so a little ahead of the curve, a little late to the game as far as death metal goes. It's got that kind of melancholic, mournful kind of melodies that I feel like Amorphous has. Mournful kind of and triumphant kind of at the same time. Now I'm just totally talking out of my ass like a music journalist. But also the technical weirdness of Adramalech, I feel it's like a good crossroads between the two, and in a lot of ways just has its own unique identity too. The vocals have that growled yet croaked thing that the first couple of Amorphous records do, Corellian Isthmus and Tales from a Thousand Lakes. Definitely not croaky like Adramalech, but you can make out words and stuff, and they're enunciated, but it's just got a little going on, if you know what I mean. But yeah, out of the pile, this might be my favorite. Super fun listen. Purtenance is next. This is a Russian bootleg. Why lie? Just really wanted it on some format. Decent enough boot off of the interwebs, eBay. I feel like this band, out of all the ones that I'm going to talk about, kind of probably listened to the Peaceville bands the most. I feel that influence of early My Dying Bride and Paradise Lost pretty strong on here. Yeah, very depressive and mournful. There's some good, somber, softer moments on here. Really excellent for the time of year. And I've been listening to, and I mentioned, listening to all these newer bands in the last update, and I feel like Purtenance is a pretty good influence on a lot of that newer 20 buck spin stuff, as well as just Finnish death metal in general. This I'm very happy to own. I think I talked about owning this on cassette a little while ago. This is a double CD reissue of Grey Misery that came out on Svart Records. Svart always does a really nice job with packaging their reissues. Not sure what I said last time, but hopefully it'll line up. So Disgrace, come from this place of being really influenced by Carcass, and I feel like a lot of early earache stuff. They start to get some weird grooves and some weird kind of rock and roll in their music a little bit, almost like, I don't know, something about it, and I do think I said this last time, it almost reminds me of heading rhythmically towards where Fear, Emptiness, Despair by Napalm Death was going, but like way more fun to listen to and like actually good and actually having like straight up death metal and faster parts. That's kind of what's going on. It's like mid-paced and fast here and there, but also some odd rotten grooves in it that I really enjoyed. Dirty bass sound. Their demos, which are all compiled on the second CD, which I'm so happy to have. Definitely lean more in the like death metal and grind kind of territory. A lot of Carcass kind of vibes going on. But yeah, Disgrace, Grey Misery. This is definitely worth picking up while you can. A lot of this Svart stuff goes out of print very quickly. So grab it now if you can. Funebre, Children of the Scorn. I bought this because it has the demos on it. I do own it on vinyl as well. And for some reason, I thought it necessary to buy the Cranial Torment demo on cassette as a repro, which was really nice. I'd pull it off the shelf, but I'm not gonna. I don't know why I found it necessary to do that. Probably because I'm slightly mentally ill. But it's good to have all these things in one place. The album itself is very good. I'm not sure what's going on with the general sound of it. I haven't heard an original pressing of it. Both my copy of it on LP and this are both represses by Extreme again. And there's something that sounds like it's been ripped directly from like a copy on vinyl that's a little dirty, or it sounds a little brick-walled or something. Maybe that's how it sounded originally. I don't know. It doesn't detract from it for me at all. Sometimes I feel like it almost kind of helps with the general dirty, ugly vibe of it, but it sounds kind of weird. It might just be the original production. I don't know. If somebody can fill me in on that, that'd be great. Anyway, the music itself from Children of the Scorn, again, it's got odd sort of rock and roll elements to it. There's a lot of big, dumb, fun to listen to riffs. Of course, death metal style vocals. And almost feels like, again, sort of like a death and roll done right sort of thing. Kind of reminds me of like Furball from Sweden a little bit. There's stuff that's just definitely got like a vaguely blues-based scale, like rock kind of thing going on, cloaked under tons of distortion and lots of that kind of thing at all. Music styles going into it. And it's, it's dark foreboding, mostly mid-paced kind of death metal stuff. Very, very fucking good. The Cranial Torment demo, I kept hearing it like revered as this very influential death metal demo. I downloaded it when I first heard about it 12 or 13 years ago, and I remember being like, what the fuck? This is unlistenable. And this is coming from somebody who likes a lot of grind and early 80s hardcore and Japanese hardcore and stuff. I was like, this is so blown out and like badly played. Like, why does anybody think this is good? The reason why is you can hear the great songs poking through all the amateurish everything else on it. It took me a lot of listens. I played that tape a bunch of times down here, and it really just started to catch on to me that despite the playing and recording being amateurish, there was something super original for the time going on with the way the songs were written. And also you have to take into the context of 1989 that it was heavy as fucking balls, and probably the only thing as heavy, as extreme that time was, mainly Carcass and probably a few other bands aping Carcass. So Funebre, horns up to that. Can't believe I just said horns up. That's whack. But anyway, Children of the Scorn, very good. Fiendish Regression by Grave on Century Media, 2004. This was sort of a roll the dice kind of thing. I think I kind of came up snake eyes, unfortunately. Woo! I got scared by the Centurion Media booklet jumping out at me. Judging by the stuff for sale in there, it's a justifiable thing. There's elements to this I like. I read a couple reviews online. People were saying, oh, this is their return to form. And I do think they had a proper return to form maybe a little bit later. It's halfway there. There's a lot of fast and dirty death metal on it. But there's very triggered drums, and there's still a lot of the groove metal kind of shit that they were doing before. In some ways, I kind of enjoy that stuff for what it is, because it kind of reminds me of like bands I like Hatebreed that are not of this genre. But considering their former glory from You'll Never See and Into the Grave, it's not the worst thing in the world, but I think I need to go and check out some of their records after this, because I know they went almost completely back to the original sound. There's just a little bit too much groove on this. They do a good cover of Burial at Sea by St. Vitus on this, though, because it came up, I think, on a shuffle. I was like at work or something. I was like, man, this is like, they're doing a total, like, you know, traditional Doom kind of thing on this song. I dig it. And then I was like, oh yeah, it's a cover. Buried at Sea. Blasphemy by Incantation. I don't hear this Incantation record talked about that much. It's after the departure of the guy from the Chasm. I'll talk about the Chasm in a minute. This is Incantation as we know and love them, with their crazy meandering song structures, you know, very volatile mix of fast and slow. You know, you know Incantation, you love them. But this is like a little bit more cleaned up, you know, like less shadowy kind of production, a little bit more bright. And I like it. I think the songs on this are particularly good. The more and more I kind of explore their discography beyond like their first classic 2 records and whatnot, the more I realize that like they don't have a bad record. Like they're always masterful. John McEntee is always masterful at what he does. But I enjoy this quite a bit. I have a live CD called Blasphemy in Brazil that is with this lineup, and that's also an excellent listen. Debut from Drawn and Quartered, To Kill Is Human, came out in '99. This is a reissue. Yeah, it's brutal death metal. There's certain similarities to Cannibal Corpse, I feel like. You know, gory, gore-soaked, fucking nasty. Dropping a cinder block on your head from a 30-story building kind of death metal. I always hear these guys referred to as, like, you know, a first wave of the brutal death metal. It's not overtly technical at all. You know, it's technical enough to be very competent death metal, so I enjoy that aspect of it. I thought I'd pick this up because this is their debut, and I know they've been around for a long time, and they've kind of faded into obscurity because of the whole worship of Scandinavian death metal and death doom and stuff like that, but they're great, you know, so I can't wait to check out more. To Kill Is Human, this was re-released on Cruciator Productions. Name I'd heard forever, but never picked up anything by. Another example of that is saw their name forever, remember hearing about them back in the day, never got anything until now. Started with their first album of Purest Fire by Centurion. This is a reissue on Hell's Headbangers. Very deicide worshipping stuff. That's always said about them. I think they're European, I think Belgian. I mean, yeah, like they have the dual vocal high and low thing like Glenn Benton did, and they're very fast and satanic. I'd say, like, in terms of intensity, maybe not so much in the songwriting catchiness quality. It's very good, but it's not first 2 deicide records good. It's close. But in terms of speed and intensity, it is greater than deicide. But yeah, very satanic, fucking infernal, rabid, fucking pissed death metal. So, get into it. This I was stoked to get a hold of. This is Immortal Fate. This is a collection of demos, and there's a radio show on here as well. Immortal Fate were a band from the East Bay, I believe, California. There's their death metal logo. You get to hear the evolution of the band on this, which is cool. Oh, and there's a patch. That's nice. Maybe I'll put it on something. Who knows? Maybe not. But this is all their demos, and this is their progression from, like, kind of a Bay Area thrash sort of sound, kind of crossover-y a little bit, you know, more technical than, but not too dissimilar to something like maybe Sacrilege BC, into a very heavy, very brutal for the time death metal band. So it's got a bunch of demos on it, got 3 demos, and then a really great live radio show, which is actually surprisingly my favorite thing on this, whereas right when they get really heavy, this band is unsung as hell. They had an unreleased record. I think it was unreleased. It was just a demo and got put out properly on vinyl way posthumously, a record called Beautiful that was very, I want to say, psychedelics affected, you know, acid drenched, brutal heavy death metal. This band had ties with the West Bay power violence scene. I think they shared members with Agents of Satan, or no less, or maybe both of them. I don't know. They had ties with that kind of more like power violence scene, and they were around before all those bands. Fucking their death metal stuff is really great. They've got a 7-inch too and a few other things. But it's cool hearing this demo. The first demo's in 90, and then by the time 93 rolls around, they've completely transmogrified from a not very heavy thrash band to like a very, very fucking heavy brutal death metal band. So always cool to hear stuff like that. Next up, this was nostalgic. Got to pick that up again. This was cheap. I think it got it on Amazon. Soothsayer. Have a Good Time. Came out on an Enigma back in, Restless, which I think were the same label, but came out in late 80s, early 90s, something like that. Quebec thrash metal band. They had a really great demo from 87, I want to say, called To Be a Real Terrorist, that got reissued on Nuclear War Now. That's like just not jokey at all, just very vicious ripping thrash. This, they're doing kind of the pizza thrash of its day, but very, very good and like played well and pissed. Kind of more like kind of crossover leaning, sillier vocals. I think there's a song about E.T. on here. Can't go wrong with a song about E.T. Yeah, there's a song called E.T. There's also a song called Pimple Sprayer. Ugh, dude, like, I don't want to overshare about, like, myself or my life outside of this channel, but I spend a lot of time in hospitals. It's kind of one of the things I do for a living. I'm not going to say what or where. And I've seen a lot of gross shit, but just the words pimple sprayer, I'm feeling sick just saying it. I don't know. It's a trigger. I'm triggered. But anyway, yeah, this is cool. It's crossover thrash stuff. There's some really good tracks on here. There's Free Violence is a really good song. Together to Make a World is a good song, but it was a big swerve from their first demo to this. They were obviously going for more of a DRI, punk thrash kind of thing, whereas like the first demo was just face ripping, almost like kind of Teutonic-ish kind of stuff. But I had to have this because I had a cutout bin tape of it like 20 years ago, and I was like, I gotta listen to that again. It's good, but not great. Soothsayer, Have a Good Time. And this is, Ben just talked about this. This is the Shub Niggurath double CD. I'm holding it up wrong, and there's glare. Welcome to my fucking channel. Horror Creatures. It's a demo and a few other demos on here. I think there's a couple of different demo recordings, possibly everything they did. I'm really well researched on this one. And then the second disc is live stuff. This is an old Mexican death metal band. Something about, I don't know if it's the recording equipment. To go off topic for a moment, there was a documentary that I recently just watched, the Slave to the Grind documentary, sent to me by Mike. Thanks again, Mike. And there was one thing brought up about, in that documentary, about the Japanese bands. And they're like, they have a different sound, and it's not just cultural differences in what they grew up with. It's, what they use in the size of their recording rooms and the equipment they used at the time and what was available to them and the types of guitars you can only get in Japan. And I never really thought about that, how just almost like terrestrial stuff that's available to different people in different parts of the world that are playing the same genre as other people contribute to the sound of a thing. And that really makes sense with, right here, Mexican death metal band coming up, Brazilian thrashy, proto-black, whatever kind of band. Later on, Mexican death metal band. This is so buzzy and trebly and fucking gnarly, and I feel like a lot of the Mexican bands that I've heard, not that I'm like an authority on Mexican death metal, I know of a handful, Mortuary and these guys in Dark Half who are really good, but they all have this like, I took a combo amp and set it on fire and then turned everything all the way, and played Show No Mercy riffs backwards and twice as fast. And I really like that about Mexican death metal. I really enjoy this. That's definitely the vibe this has going on. It's very gnarly, slightly blown out, just fucking nasty. Really good. So this is Chakal from Brazil. This is a compilation of Abominable, Anno Domini, and the Living with the Pigs. Look at that artwork. EP. I haven't listened to this in a while. I listened to it 2 or 3 times when I got it. This was a box to check off for, Brazilian thrash and death metal for me. It's a Cagumelo, however you say it, band. It's very primal, even in terms of a lot of the. It's very primal, but more restrained. It's not as frenzied as, say, a Sarcophago, or Mutilator, or any of those bands, sex trash. It's a little bit more like, hey, we listen to Venom a lot, we listen to the first Exodus a lot. There's a lot of like straightforward song structures and choruses and riffs and stuff like that on it. I'm trying to remember what stuck out to me about the Living with the Pigs EP that's tacked on the end. I think they go in a very different direction that's like a bit heavier but a bit goofier, like maybe a little bit on the crossover side, but I can't remember right now. Yeah, I remember distinctly not as being into Living with the Pigs as I am the other one, which Abominable Anno Domini. AAD? Sure. Yeah, Kagamalo Records. This is a late 80s one, I'm pretty sure. This goes back to the 80s as far as I remember. And finally, the Chasm. I shamefully haven't spent as much time with this as I should have. Procession to the Infraworld. This is mentioned a lot by friends of mine as like just this band in general as stuff that you need to check out. Daniel Corchado. There's a Chicago address on this. Pretty sure the Chasm started in Mexico, though. Could be wrong. Who knows? At any rate, this is later on into their career, I think. I think they started sometime in the early 90s, and this is 2000. This came out on Dwell Records. There is a lot going on musically with this. I remember that much. There's a fair amount of melodicism going on, but there's also a lot of just parts, a lot of tempo changes, and a lot of dramatic shifts on this. And I remember it being very, very fucking engaging, but it got avalanched. Now it's at the top of my pile, though. So we'll listen to it anew. I know there's people probably at home like tearing their hair out, being like, "Why the fuck aren't you listening to that more?" Gotta make the time, and that's part of the reason I do videos like this. Just remind myself, dude, what about that Chasm CD you listened to twice, you dumbass? All right, be good, everyone.